ਕਾਂਸ਼ੀ ਟੀਵੀ ਦੇ ਸਾਰੇ ਦਰਸ਼ਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਮੇਰੀ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਪ੍ਰੇਮ ਭਰੀ ਨਮਸਕਾਰ, ਜੈ ਗੁਰਦੇਵ, ਜੈ ਭੀਮ, ਜੈ ਭਾਰਤ। ਪਿਆਰੇ ਦਰਸ਼ਕੋ, ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਬਿਸ਼ਨਦਾਸ ਬੈਂਸ ਅੱਜ ਸਪੈਸ਼ਲ ਦੇਸ਼ ਪ੍ਰਦੇਸ਼ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਸਾਹਮਣੇ ਪੇਸ਼ ਹੋ ਰਿਹਾ ਹਾਂ। ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਪਤਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਨੋਰਮਲੀ ਇਸ ਟਾਈਮ 'ਤੇ ਮੇਰਾ ਥਰਸਡੇ ਵਾਲਾ ਰਿਪੀਟ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਹੈ, but this is my live program, or in this program I'm going to talk about in Punjabi and also in English, and today I'm going to talk about politics. And before I talk about politics, pyare darshko, I like to clarify that Kanshi TV is a non-political organization. Therefore, the Kanshi TV is not bound to agree with me or my guest on anything or everything what we say. So this is a political program, and whatever I say is my responsibility, or my guest which I'm going to introduce later on is their responsibility. So, pyare darshko, as I said, I'm going to talk about politics, your democratic rights and responsibility. Next week, you know, there are local elections. We call it local elections, which means the council elections. In addition to council elections, there are two more elections. One is metro mayor election. When I say metro mayor election, it means the whole Midland, the mayor for the whole Midland. Midland got 7 districts, pyare darshko, or 7 districts are Wolverhampton, Walsall, Dudley, Birmingham, Sandwell, Solihull, Coventry. So there will be a metro mayor, and there will be election next week on 6th of May. Also, there will be PCC election, which we call it PCC, means Police, Crime and Commissioner. Police, Crime and Commissioner, oda bhi election hoega. It means you will have 3 votes. When you go to the polling station, you will have 3 votes. Some people have received by now, or should receive in the coming days. They have applied for postal ballot, and they should have received their postal ballot. And there should be 3 posting ballots, and please fill those properly and post them before Thursday. And thank you. And you know, there are few more days left, about 5 days left before the election, and during those days you have to decide which party, which candidate are you going to vote for. Or you know that England or English democracy is the oldest, and the Indian democracy is the largest. There are 2 different things. Both got democracy. One is oldest, one is largest. The oldest democracy over the years has been purified. When I say it has been purified, it is very open and honest. But if you compare the Indian politics or Indian elections, they are dirty and dishonest. I always say, you know, all those who came from India, they know very well the difference between Indian politics and the British or European politics. I often compare the Indian politics or the European politics with something, example I always give. When we say, let's test the water, means when election comes close, and we talk about let's test the water. Test the water means how deep is the water. And if the water is clear, you can see the bottom of the water. and you can just roughly guess how deep this water could be. But if the water is dirty, gandala, or it is difficult for you to guess how deep the water could be. So therefore, it applied to Indian politics and the British politics. And the British politics is like clean water, transfer water. You can see that. Or people who are candidates and who are electable, they always try to be honest to you. They won't make false promises because they have to answer those promises. So there is a lot more transparency. And as compared to India, the candidates and the parties, they make a lot of false promises during the elections, and that they try to misguide the electors. Once the election is over, and they go different ways. And you have to regret that I vote for them. But over here, you vote a candidate, you can lobby that candidate, you can go to that elected member of parliament or council and talk to that person, okay, you have promised me this and that, and you are acting in a different way. Or you did promise that you raise my voice in the council chamber or in the parliament, but you have not. You gone a different way. So that person is a questionable, and you can question that person. In India, nobody care about. Whatever you say to that person, first thing you will be, there will be extreme difficulty for you to find that person, because they don't come around very often and they don't hold regular surgeries. Regular surgery means monthly or fortnightly, people sit around here, over here, member of parliament or councils or councillors, they hold their regular surgeries like doctors. I know myself, I used to hold my surgery twice a week, and I used to advertise in the press and leafleting in my ward and telling people where I'm going to be available to talk to. And people can come and talk to me about their problems. So if you want to see a member of parliament here after the election, and they are easily available, you have to keep your eye and ears open and find out where they sit, hold their monthly surgery, and you can go to their monthly surgery and you can ask their help to resolve your problems or take your case with other department. It's not very difficult. So as I said, in India, once you are elected, it is very, very difficult to find the person, and so that's the difference. So प्यारे दर्शकों, that's one aspect of the politics here. These are your rights and responsibility. What I'm saying to you today, later on in the second part of my program, I will introduce you to somebody who is actually a candidate to next election. So I will talk about him later on. Why I'm talking in English, I think it is better for the younger generation. Sometimes they find it difficult to understand Indian and Indian politics. So I like younger generation to listen very carefully what I say and what my special guest this afternoon going to say about. So प्यारे दर्शकों, another thing I like to encourage the younger generation, not only to take part in voting. You have the right to become a candidate, but you have to get involved in any political party. I don't say join this party or that party, join A party or B party. It is your choice. The best thing for you to join a party you like, and go through the process to learn the system and to know about the administration, because whether it's a local authority, council, or whether it's a parliament, the system is all the same on a local level or highly on a national level. They have committees and they have ministers. Even on local levels, we say to them a member of cabinet, member of particular parties or political committees, and committees of the council. Similarly, at the House of Commons, the members, the member of parliament, if they are in control, if their party is in control, like at the moment the Conservative Party is in control, and they have ministers, deputy ministers, and they got a lot of other help. So the system is all the same, Pyare Darshko, but you have to learn the system. And don't be shy saying or thinking that I don't know about the politics. Every party, they invite, and they are very keen and interested to have the younger generation to join their political party, because the elder generation, they keep on passing, and the younger generation will take over gradually. So the elder generation, experienced councillors and experienced member of parliament, they teach them, they train them in politics or their party political line. So don't be shy and don't be hesitant thinking that you don't know anything about politics. Once you got involved, you will gradually learn from the grassroots up to the top. It depends upon your involvement, depends upon your ability, whether you want to become a councillor, member of parliament, or you want to involve in other organization. So Pyare Darshko, encourage your sons and daughters. Every party is looking for younger generation, and every party looking for recruitment for their future, for the future of their party, for the future of their council, for the future of parliament. So I would say that once you got into, and you will learn and you will reach wherever you want to reach. The time I got involved, going back to in 1960s, and there was no knowledge about political structure here, and lots of people coming from India, Pakistan or foreign, and they were thinking they don't have the political rights here, they don't have the voting rights here, they can't become a candidate and they can't get involved. They have their own personal problem to set up here, their job, their housing, their other issues, problem back home, and so they have to settle and think about everything from the beginning. And in those days, when people were not thinking about taking part in politics, I got involved. Knowing nothing about the system here, I learned through the system. And in those days, I found a lot of friends in my party, who were very helpful. And they helped me to get trained. They helped me to go on the ladder to become a councillor. And they helped me to learn the system. And then gradually I became the mayor as well, member of the party, member of the council, and chairman of the committees, so many other outside bodies. So you learn, it's open a big, road, and you will learn a lot of things. And in those days, there was no numerations, and the basic numeration for one meeting was around 13 quid, 13 pound, and I was not after money. I was involved in the local system because I want to do something for my people. In those days, I used to call my people the ethnic minority, BME community. But later on, I get used to talk to everybody, and they were all my people, and I had a lot of respect for them, and they respect me as well. So it's a tit for tat and give and take, and you will learn. Get involved and bring your younger generation to the party, whichever party you like. So you get involved and you will reach wherever you want to reach. There is a progression system, and there are people to help you, and don't be hesitant. So प्यारे दर्शकों, मैं ये कह रहा ਸੀਗਾ कि ਸਾਡੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਾਉਂਸਲਰ ਬਹੁਤ ਘੱਟ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ, ਔਰ ਮੈਂ ਜਿਸ ਟਾਈਮ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਆਪ ਕਾਉਂਸਲਰ ਬਣਿਆ ਸੀਗਾ ਉਸ ਵੇਲੇ ਕਿਸੇ ਨੂੰ ਪਤਾ ਵੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੀਗਾ ਕਿ ਸਾਡੀ ਵੋਟ ਵੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ, ਜਾਂ ਕਾਉਂਸਲਰ ਵੀ ਬਣ ਸਕਦੇ ਆ ਜਾਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਬਣ ਸਕਦੇ ਆ। ਔਰ ਲੋਕ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਆਪ ਪੁੱਛਦੇ ਸੀਗੇ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਾਉਂਸਲਰ ਕਿੱਦਾਂ ਬਣ ਸਕਦੇ ਆ। ਸੋ ਪਿਆਰੇ ਦਰਸ਼ਕੋ, ਆਈ ਕੱਟ ਸ਼ੋਰਟ ਮਾਈ ਟਾਕ ਹੀਅਰ and I'll leave it for some time later on to talk to you about how to become a councillor, how to become member of parliament, how to get into public life. So now I have my friend, my guest for this afternoon, and as I said earlier, this is the time you can lobby the candidate, and you can question them, and you can talk to them about your problem and get promise if they are acting for you or if they will be acting for you after the election. So this is the time for you to think about which party you are going to vote for or which candidate you are going to support. Now I have my guest. It's my pleasure to introduce my good friend Simon Foster. Simon Foster, friends, is a candidate, Labour candidate for the West Midland PCC, Police and Crime Commissioner. Simon, you are most welcome to the Kanshi TV. Feel yourself comfortable.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
It's a real pleasure to be here, and thank you so much for the invitation and opportunity to come and speak to you this afternoon, and also to speak to your viewers.
Thank you. And friends, Simon is very experienced person. I know some, not everything. He is a legal person, barrister, big lawyer, and he contributed a part of his life, 35 years to the profession. Simon, I know more than that, but I won't say anything myself. It's better you tell us what you are and what you know about being PCC, and so tell us a bit more about yourself, please.
Thank you very much. Yes, as you say, Bishan, I have been a legal aid solicitor for 35 years.
Yeah.
I've worked in the community, I've worked in private practice, I've been a partner in a law firm for 22 years, and I've dedicated my 35-year career in the profession to serving the people and communities of the West Midlands. And I'm passionate about access to justice, equality before the law and the rule of law for all, and not just for the few. But I am the Labour Police and Crime Commissioner candidate for the election on the 6th of May, as you say. Now, it's very important that people do understand what the role of the Police and Crime Commissioner is all about, because I think it's true that it's not a role that's well understood amongst the wider public. Now, the first thing to remember about the role is that it's not about operational day-to-day policing, because that's the responsibility of the Chief Constable. It's about representing the people, not the police. It's about democratic accountability. It's about making sure that the police are providing an effective and efficient service to the people of the West Midlands. And there are three principal functions that you have. I mean, it's more complex than this, but in simple terms, number one, you have the responsibility for preparing a police and crime plan, which sets out the needs, priorities and objectives for policing in the West Midlands as far as the people are concerned. Number 2, you're responsible for setting the budget for West Midlands Police, and in particular setting the council tax precept, which is that part of your local council tax that goes towards paying for local policing. And then finally, you're responsible for holding the Chief Constable and the police service to account on behalf of the people in the widest possible sense.
Right. So you are saying that you will bring a lot of changes to the police services around West Midland to make it more modern and hope for the future? Yes.
I mean, accountability is absolutely key. We need to make sure we've got a police service that is responsive to the needs and priorities and objectives of the people of the West Midlands. One of my key concerns, if I were to be elected as the Police and Crime Commissioner, is to rebuild community policing in the West Midlands. As you may well know, in the West Midlands Police suffered £175 million worth of cuts. We lost 2,221 of our police officers. That was 25% of our police officers. We lost many hundreds of essential police staff, and community policing was dismantled. We had 1,800 community police officers in the West Midlands back in 2010, but by 2018 we only had about 700, so we lost over 50% of the community police officers. So I want to rebuild community policing in the West Midlands, and I'll tell you why, Bishan, because for me, community policing is what the people of the West Midlands want. They want preventative, proactive, problem-solving, visible police officers out on the streets of the West Midlands, keeping them, their families and the people and communities of the West Midlands safe and secure. And that's why I've pledged 450 extra community police officers, and I'm talking about police officers here, not police community support officers.
Police officer,
Exactly, 450 extra community police officers out on the streets of the West Midlands.
How about you, when you talk about austerity, budget has been cut over the last 10 years, and the West Midland Pyare Dashko, they have lost at least 20,000 police officers, and the Midland at the moment got 7,000 something, 7,400, nearly 7,000 police officers, and covering 2.9 million population of the West Midland. And austerity, and the local authorities are suffering, everybody is suffering, and now we're going through a pandemic, another pressure on everybody, even on the government. How you think you can get some more money? Because at the moment the budget is 4.5 million, something like that.
West Midlands Police budget is about 650 million.
650 million, So how you think you can generate more budget, and recruit more police officers?
Well, you're absolutely right. It's been a challenging time for policing over the past 10 years for the reasons that we've just outlined in terms of the cuts that have been imposed on West Midlands Police and the budgets that have been slashed. And of course, we have to always also remember, Bishan, is that as a consequence of those cuts, local council tax has had to increase in order to make up in part for those cuts to central government grant. And the effect of that has been that local people have ended up having to pay more council tax for less local policing. And that's not fair. And in addition to that, we have a Conservative government who continues to support a fundamentally unfair funding formula that is not fit for purpose, that disproportionately disadvantages the West Midlands. The effect of that is that we lose out on about £40 million a year in income as far as West Midlands Police is concerned. And again, I want to change that. But to come back to your question around, how are we going to recruit these officers? At the moment, we're in the process of a national uplift in police officers. There will be a net uplift of police officers coming to the West Midlands of 1,200 police officers between 2020 and 2023. I want... I mean, we have to remember, of course, that those 1,200 police officers, although they're welcome, they're not going to make up for the 2,221 officers that we lost in the last decade. But what I want is, out of that 1,200 net uplift that is going to be with us by 2023, I want 450 of those police officers to be allocated to community policing.
That's great. That's great. Let's, Simon, move on to what I just mentioned, pandemic. Because of coronavirus, people are locked in over the last at least 18 months, and there is a huge pressure on the families, huge pressure on the community, and they can't see each other, and that's build up pressure on the families, and domestic violence increasing, and other crimes are increasing, and how are you going to tackle that? General crime, knife crime, or domestic violence, and just bringing them together,
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, plainly, the pressures that have been brought to bear, not only on the police service, but on people and communities as a consequence of the COVID-19 pandemic, have been layered on top of all those pressures that have existed as a consequence for the past 10 years. So you're absolutely right. And of course, the consequence of the COVID-19 pandemic for many will mean increasing inequality and poverty and unemployment. And we all know that those circumstances can, for some, make crime an attractive and viable option. And of course, it can mean that the vulnerable can become ever more susceptible to becoming victims of crime and criminal exploitation. In terms of how we tackle knife crime, I mean, it's or violent crime as well. I mean, it's sometimes said, isn't it, that the first duty of government is to keep its people safe and secure. Well, in my view, there's been a flagrant breach on the part of central government to comply with that duty, and that's had catastrophic and devastating consequences for people, families and communities. And we've seen the consequences of that in terms of lives being lost, particularly amongst our children and young people, which is truly tragic. What I would say in terms of how we need to respond to that, I mean, plainly the police in and of themselves can't solve this on their own. That's why I say but part of the solution is community policing. So I've already explained to you what we need to do about community policing. But secondly, and I say part of the solution around community policing is because we know that the cuts to policing nationally, in terms of 21,000 police officers lost across the country, 23,000 essential police staff. We know that contributed to the surge in violence and knife crime, and that was the responsibility of the Conservative government. They tried to suppress that inconvenient truth, but the Home Office has acknowledged that contributed to that surge in serious violence. Secondly, we know that there's a strong association between those areas in the country that suffered the greatest cuts to youth services have suffered the highest rises in knife crime. And the All-Party Parliamentary Group on Knife Crime plotted that and drew attention to that strong association. So as well as recruiting community police officers, that's key, but we need to rebuild youth services throughout the West Midlands as well, because in the West Midlands we suffered disproportionate cuts to youth services, 82% cuts to youth services across the West Midlands. Youth services were decimated, and I'm going to work, if elected, with who I hope will be a Labour Metro Mayor, in order to make sure that between us we can put youth workers back into neighbourhoods. That's absolutely key. Thirdly, we need to get a grip on school exclusions, because we need to keep our children in education, because if they're excluded from school, they're often vulnerable to being criminally exploited via county lines, for example. We need to strengthen statutory safeguarding, but we need to invest in the violence reduction unit as well, because we've got to have a focus on prevention, early intervention, and addressing the underlying causes of serious youth violence and knife crime, because as I always say, prevention is always better than having prevention of crime is always better than having to deal with the consequences of crime. That's absolutely key. And of course, we need joint working between the police, statutory agencies, the third sector, but most important, of course, communities, because it's only together that we can prevent youth violence and knife crime, protect people, and most important of all, save lives.
So what you are saying, the community is the eyes and ears that will be, taken into consideration, and plus the local authorities, and that's how we can all jointly, tackle the crime or bring it down. I was going to ask you, because I've been involved myself, the community policing sort of, they used to have regular surgeries, right? And plus lots of local police station has been closed, right? And what you think about regular surgeries and reopening the police station closed, or provide some more police station? At the moment, I think, in the Midland, 52, 55, something like that, police stations are, reduced from double the number of over the years, You think you can, or you will be thinking to, open more police officers, and the community policing, like community surgeries, will be continued?
Yeah, well, certainly as if I'm elected as Police and Crime Commissioner, I want to hold community surgeries personally across the West Midlands, because I think it's important that if you are the democratically elected and directly accountable Police and Crime Commissioner, you need to be accessible, and you need to be transparent, and you need to be accountable to the people. And one way of doing that would be community surgeries. And I'm certainly committed to ensuring that, I've always said that I want to be a people and communities Police and Crime Commissioner. And what I mean by that is a Police and Crime Commissioner who is always going to engage with, listen to, and work with the people and communities of the West Midlands. That's absolutely fundamental to the way I see the role. Now, coming on to police stations, the problem we've got with police stations is that we have a government and we have a Prime Minister that does not believe in and is not prepared to invest in local community police stations. The main reason that 600 police stations have closed across the country is as a consequence of the budget cuts that were imposed on police services across the country. In the West Midlands, as we've said, we lost £175 million in funding, and we lost 2,221 of our police officers. 25% of our police officers were cut during that period of time. Number one. Number two, when the Prime Minister himself was Mayor of London, of course, back in 2013, he closed 65 police stations himself because he said they were no longer central to his thinking. And thirdly, when the Prime Minister came to the West Midlands back on the 26th of July 2019, he made it very clear that there would be no additional funding for police stations because he did not believe them to be value for money. And of course, we have so the problem that has resulted from all of that is that we have had to choose between frontline policing and police stations. And the choice that has been made in the West Midlands is to focus on frontline police officers rather than empty buildings. And of course we have to appreciate that these police stations have often been empty and underused as a consequence of the cuts. They've got over £20 million worth of repair and maintenance and improvement backlogs. And so the choice, as a consequence of the austerity imposed by the Conservative government, the choice has been between frontline police officers or funding or hundreds fewer police officers to keep open empty buildings. And from my point of view, I will always invest in police officers, because at the end of the day it's police officers out on the streets that will keep people safe and secure. And I would just add that as far as the always remember that these cuts were imposed and supported by Conservative MPs and members and supporters of the Conservative Party who now complain about the consequences, that they were responsible for having made these decisions in the first place. And I have put it to the Conservative candidate for Police and Crime Commissioner. I have said to him, if he intends to keep these police stations open, how much is it going to cost? Where is the money going to come from? And what are going to be the knock-on financial cost consequences in terms of frontline policing and the repair, improvement and refurbishment of the existing police state? Because I want a police estate that is fit for the 21st century. And we also have to bear in mind that the current policing minister has made it very clear that he himself wants more cuts to the police estate. In other words, more cuts to police stations. So we have a central Conservative government that says more cuts to police stations, and yet we have a Conservative candidate who is saying that he wants to save police stations. Well, plainly there's an inconsistency there. You can't square that circle. And the reality is, we say, if you want to vote Labour, you will get 450 extra community police officers out on the streets. If you want to vote Conservative, you will get hundreds fewer frontline police officers in order to keep open underused and empty buildings.
All right. Okay, can I ask you a question you slightly touched upon? You know the recent reports, BME community or ethnic minority, they are suffering disproportionately as far as the employment is concerned. And I know from the facts that the West Midland Police, they got 10.9%, something like that, police officer from BME. Do you think that percentage of figure represent the population, or you think could be more done about to have few more from the ethnic minority or mixture?
Absolutely. I mean, we say in this country, don't we, and we pride ourselves about this, that we police by consent. That's a fundamental principle of policing in this country. And I do think that if you are going to be consistent with that principle, you need a police service that is representative of the communities that it serves. And although West Midlands Police has made progress in recent years over this, there's still more to be done, and we don't have at the moment a police service that is representative of the community that it serves. As you quite rightly pointed out, I mean, in the West Midlands, Black, Asian and minority ethnic communities make up about 30% of the population, but only about 13% of police officers are from Black, Asian and minority ethnic communities. And we need to do better. I mean, it has improved. Back in 2014 it was about 8%. It's now about 13%. And I believe that the recent recruits in the last 12 months or so have made up about 23% of the recent recruits. So progress is being made, but we definitely need a police service that is representative of the community it serves. Not only because it's important that we have policing by consent, but also I believe that we will have a more effective and efficient police service if it is representative of the communities it serves, because there are very many talented people who can make a serious and valuable contribution to policing in the West Midlands amongst the Black, Asian and minority ethnic community. And at the moment that talent and ability isn't coming into West Midlands Police, and we need to make sure it does. And I do believe if we have that as well, it will be a more efficient police service, because it will be more in touch with an understanding of all of the people, exactly, all of the people and communities of the West Midlands, and that's really important in terms of trust, legitimacy, and ability to be able to provide a good police service for all the people and communities of the West Midlands.
You know, I find it, Simon, I find it very encouraging, when I see Black ethnic minority police officer, I find something, in myself, some sort of encouragement, thinking, oh, here is a, West Indian police officer, here is a, Indian, and it's, it's a mutual bond sort of thing, and give you some sort of confidence that they are on the beat here. And even the community, in the past, you see, people were thinking ethnic minority here, the indigenous police here. And both sides, they were, never get together, never mix easily, and they mix only when there is a fight, right? Now, because of a mixture of different ethnic background, and people started thinking that trust, started coming back to the community. Yes, there are black officer, black policeman on the beat, and they can go easily to talk to them. That's the sort of thing, that's my feeling, as a community member, Yeah. Can I ask you another thing, the hate crime, and because of this pandemic, coronavirus, police or the agencies, not only here, throughout the world, have not been able to do anything about hate crime. And it's under the grass, it's not decreasing. To my understanding, it's increasing. Not only locally, it's worldwide. And when I say worldwide, inclusive of UK, right? So what can we do, once the, lockdown finish? And it will mushroom gradually, and what can we do? And plus hate crime in schools, when the schools, colleges, universities open, and what you think, what your ideas, to take, to tackle that and prepare the ground for that sort of, situation?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very clear about this. There's absolutely no place.
You've been working on it, yeah.
Well, there's no place whatsoever for hate crime in the West Midlands.
Yeah.
And we know that, that, as you say, hate crime, I mean, back in October 2020, hate crime had increased by a nearly 40% in the West Midlands, and it's plainly something that needs to be addressed. We have to understand, of course, as well, that hate crime is often underreported, of course, and so those numbers don't necessarily represent the true scale of the problem. What I would say is we need to think about what we can do to work around the prevention of hate crime, initiatives in terms of education in schools and so on. I think that's really important because, as I always say, and what we've said before in this discussion, the prevention of crime is always better than having to deal with the consequences of crime. That's really important. My starting point is always prevention first. So that's the number one point. But secondly, we need to facilitate and encourage the reporting of hate crime. People need to be comfortable and have the confidence to report hate crime, either direct to the police or to third-party reporting centres. And I do think the role that third-party reporting centres is really important because sometimes people feel more comfortable about reporting to a third-party reporting centre in the community, in an organisation that they know and is perhaps local to them, and that perhaps they feel will have a greater understanding of the issue than necessarily direct to the police. So it's important we have those partnerships around third-party reporting centres to improve trust and confidence around reporting. Secondly, we need to make sure that when hate crime is reported to the police, they take it seriously and they investigate it. And as far as possible, those perpetrators of hate crime are held to account via the criminal justice system. That's absolutely essential, and that there is accountability for hate crime in the West Midlands. And then finally, I would say it's very important as well that we have appropriate victim support services in place, because we know that the effect of being a victim of hate crime can have very distressing and upsetting consequences for that particular individual, because quite often they've been subjected to that hate crime as a consequence of just simply who they are as a person, which is very upsetting and distressing. So we need to make sure that we have the right support services at the right time in order to help and support people who've been the victims of hate crime.
We need a peaceful, loving society living together.
Exactly.
Right. Can I ask you another question regarding now the lockdown is gradually, finishing, and we hope we hope that we will come to some sort of a normality, you know, in the coming months. When you come to normality, and I'm going to ask you about the night time economy. It will flourish. Pubs, clubs, dancing hall, this and that, you know. And from my own experience, you know, it brings a lot of revenue to different, you know, pockets. Plus it brings a lot of problems as well at night time. You know, I have been going on night time and creating a lot of problems, you know. And it is major headache, you know. It used to be major headache to some local authorities to control the night crime, you know, nighttime crime, you know. You got any idea, you know, how you can, you know, overcome that, organize that, you know, the crime at night time, you know, nighttime economy flourish in every city and town without any fear and frustration, you know.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, as the restrictions, we hope, will begin to lift so that we can return to some sort of normality. It's very important on so many different levels. It is essential. And you're right in terms of the nighttime economy. Plainly, that nighttime economy plays a very important role in terms of the economy for a lot of local businesses who provide jobs and income for local people. And of course, it provides the opportunity for people to enjoy themselves socially, which in many respects they've not had the opportunity to do that recently. So very important that we're able to acknowledge that. But in terms of the challenges that can face, yes, of course it can present challenges on occasions, partly as a consequence of sometimes disorder, sometimes in relation to drug activity of one description or another.
I was going to mention
well, okay. Yes, indeed. And of course, sometimes, regrettably, as a consequence of violence as well. I mean, plainly, some of these issues have to be dealt with through licensing, which of course is not, well, which the police do have a role in relation to working in partnership with local authorities. I think that's extremely important. And part of this is about partnership working, isn't it? It's about making sure that local authorities and the police are on top of these issues. And again, I come back to preferably being in a position to be able to prevent these things happening in the first place with proper regulation of particular nighttime venues. And when things go wrong, action is taken accordingly. And of course, it's important to make sure that you have policing available, and of course emergency services available. Again, working in partnership to make sure ultimately, because at the end of the day, we want people, young people particularly, but older people as well, to be able to go out and enjoy yourselves. But we want them to be able to do that in a way that is safe and keeps people secure. That at the end of the day has to be the primary objective, of course.
Yeah, another very difficult area, you see, I'm going to mention is safeguarding children. And I know in the past there has been a lot of problems, may not be local, but somewhere, in the north. And you got any idea how we can tackle that? That's very difficult to identify and very difficult area to resolve that problem, to protect children from misuse, and that it can happen anywhere, right? And it can be a problem for police commissioner like yourself.
Yeah. I mean, I've always made it very clear, Bishan, that I want children, young people to be an absolute priority in the West Midlands. As you probably know, the West Midlands is one of the youngest regions in the entire of Europe, if not the youngest region. So it's extremely important that we have a child-centred and young people-centred approach in the West Midlands. For that reason, I think that our children, young people should expect nothing less from us in that respect. And I've said that children, young people have to be an absolute priority. I mean, partly because, firstly, it's the law. because of course it's a duty to safeguard and promote the welfare of children, and the interests of children have to be a top priority in all actions and decisions that affect them, number one. Number two, if we listen to, engage with and invest in our children and young people, that will prevent crime and antisocial behaviour. And it will, more important, just as importantly, give our children and young people the best possible opportunity to make the most of their potential. And we know that there's so much talent and ability and enthusiasm and energy amongst our children and young people, and we really need to make sure that we're maximising that for the benefit of all of us. And of course, as you say, children, thirdly, are often, though, amongst the most vulnerable in our society, either because they've perhaps been victims of domestic abuse, or they've got mental health issues, or perhaps they're care experienced because they're within the care system. So it's absolutely important that we are safeguarding and promoting the welfare of children and young people. And you're quite right. I mean, we come back to this problem about the decimation of youth services. I definitely think that's been a big problem. We need to put that right. School exclusions plainly means that children can become vulnerable to becoming victims of crime or criminal exploitation, particularly via county lines, for example. And I mean, you mentioned child sexual exploitation as well. And of course, we also need to make sure that we get statutory safeguarding right, because of course, I mean, as you may well know from your experience in local authority, Bishan, a lot of safeguarding issues traditionally has focused on safeguarding issues within the home. But of course, nowadays we have challenges around safeguarding, particularly in connection with criminal exploitation via county lines, where children and young people are increasingly subject to the risk of exploitation outside the home.
That's right.
And I think the system has not best responded to that challenge in recent years. So that's another issue that we need to put right.
Very quickly, we got 40 seconds. You want to add anything, what you have already said?
Only just to say that my objective is to be a People and Community Commissioner. I want to engage with, listen to and work with the people and communities of the West Midlands. My top priority will always be justice, safety and security of the people and communities of the West Midlands. And if people are intending to vote on the 6th of May, I would ask them to give serious consideration to voting Simon Foster as the Labour Police and Crime Commissioner.
How about the Metro Mayor?
And of course we've got the Metro Mayor elections on the 6th of May.